Ferrari reveals where rumors have been coming from and punishes the source. Toto backs Max for the title, and all the latest F1 news. The Formula One paddock is buzzing with drama once again, and this time it involves Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur making some very intriguing comments about mysterious third parties and cryptic messages from his chairman. If you're wondering what's really going on behind the scenes at Maranello, stick around because this story has more twists than Monaco's hairpin turns. So here's what happened. Ferrari Chairman John Elkann made a very public statement during the United States Grand Prix weekend, expressing his full confidence in team principal Fred Vasseur. Now, you might think that's just standard corporate speak, but Vasseur's response suggests there's way more to this story than meets the eye. Speaking to media after the race in Austin, Vasseur dropped what might be the most intriguing quote of the season. He said that Elkann's statement was aimed at a mysterious third party and external target, not necessarily the Ferrari team itself. This immediately raises the question, who exactly is this third party that needed to hear Ferrari's message of support for their current leadership? The timing of this statement is absolutely crucial to understand. Christian Horner, the former Red Bull team principal who recently parted ways with his team in a massive settlement deal worth around $100 million, has been repeatedly linked with a potential move to Ferrari. These rumors have been circulating for months, particularly after Ferrari's disappointing start to the season earlier this year. What makes this situation even more fascinating is that Horner was actually approached by Ferrari before he left Red Bull. This happened in the aftermath of the British Grand Prix, when speculation about his future was already heating up. So we're not talking about random media gossip here. There were genuine conversations happening behind the scenes. But here's where the plot thickens. Vasseur found himself under serious pressure earlier in the season when Ferrari was struggling to find their competitive edge. Rumors emerged around the Canadian Grand Prix that the team was actively considering replacing him. The pressure was so intense that Ferrari felt compelled to announce a new multi-year contract extension for Vasseur before the Hungarian Grand Prix, essentially trying to shut down the speculation. However, that didn't stop the rumor mill from continuing to churn. After the summer break, reports surfaced again, claiming that Horner had once more appeared on Ferrari's radar. This is when Elkann decided to make his very public statement of support for Vasseur. Now, let's decode what Vasseur really meant by his third-party comment. He emphasized that he and Elkann maintain constant communication, so the chairman's public statement wasn't really for the benefit of anyone inside Ferrari. Instead, it was clearly directed at someone outside the organization who needed to hear that message loud and clear. The most logical interpretation is that this was Ferrari's way of telling Horner, or perhaps his representatives, that they're not interested in making a change right now. It's essentially a public rejection without naming names, a very Italian way of handling delicate political situations. What makes Horner an unlikely candidate for Ferrari becomes clear when you look at what he's actually seeking for his Formula One return. Sources suggest he's prioritizing a shareholding or team ownership role, similar to what Toto Wolff has at Mercedes, where he's not just the team principal but also owns a significant stake in the team. Ferrari's ownership structure makes this virtually impossible. The team is predominantly publicly owned, with the remaining shares split between Exor and Piero Ferrari. There's simply no room for the kind of ownership stake that would appeal to someone of Horner's stature and ambitions. There's also Ferrari's notorious hire and fire culture to consider. During Horner's 20-year tenure at Red Bull, Ferrari went through 6 different team principals. That's not exactly job security, and for someone who built a stable dynasty at Red Bull, jumping into Ferrari's revolving door leadership structure doesn't seem particularly appealing. The broader context here is fascinating because it reveals how Formula One's power dynamics work behind the scenes. Public statements from team chairmen aren't just corporate communications, they're strategic messages aimed at specific audiences. When Elkann spoke publicly about his confidence in Vasseur, he was essentially playing chess on the paddock's political board. Vasseur's candid admission that the statement was for external consumption shows a level of transparency that's rarely seen in Formula One. Most team principals would have simply thanked their chairman for the support and moved on. Instead, Vasseur pulled back the curtain and revealed the strategic nature of modern Formula One communications. This entire situation also highlights how quickly narratives can shift in Formula One. One disappointing race weekend can spark replacement rumors, while a chairman's carefully worded statement can shut them down just as quickly. The sport operates in a constant state of speculation and counter-speculation. For Ferrari fans, this drama represents both the blessing and curse of supporting the sport's most iconic team. The intense scrutiny means every decision gets magnified, but it also means the team has to be constantly defending itself against rumors and speculation. As we head into the final races of the season, Vasseur can now focus on racing rather than politics. His mysterious third-party comment has essentially confirmed what many suspected, that Ferrari's public statement was their way of closing the door on the Horner speculation once and for all. Picture this: you're a Formula One driver, constantly under the microscope, and suddenly rumors start swirling about your team potentially replacing your boss. How do you handle it? Well, if you're Charles Leclerc, you deliver a masterclass performance on track and shut down the gossip with one powerful statement. Today we're diving into the Ferrari drama that's been brewing behind the scenes, and how Leclerc's Austin podium became the perfect response to all the noise. The Circuit of the Americas witnessed something special this past weekend, but it wasn't just about the racing. While Max Verstappen continued his championship charge and Lando Norris fought tooth and nail for every point, Charles Leclerc was dealing with something entirely different. The Ferrari driver had been fielding questions about his team's internal stability for weeks, and frankly, he was getting tired of it. Let's rewind and understand what's been happening at Ferrari. Reports have been circulating about potential changes in the team's leadership structure. Specifically, there were whispers about Christian Horner, the former Red Bull team principal, possibly being linked with Ferrari. This naturally raised questions about Fred Vasseur's position as team principal, despite him signing a new multi-year contract earlier this season. Now, here's where things get interesting. Ferrari Chairman John Elkann felt compelled to publicly back Vasseur ahead of the United States Grand Prix. When a chairman needs to make public statements supporting their team principal, you know there's been some serious speculation going on. Vasseur himself addressed these rumors in Austin, suggesting that Elkann's assurance was more for external parties rather than for him personally. But imagine being Charles Leclerc in this situation. You're trying to focus on delivering results for Ferrari, fighting for podiums and championship points, while constantly being asked about your team's internal politics. The pressure around Ferrari is always intense. But when you add speculation about leadership changes into the mix, it becomes almost unbearable. This is exactly why Leclerc's performance in Austin was so significant. He didn't just finish third, he earned that podium through pure determination and skill. The weekend started rough, with a gearbox problem during the first practice session, which cost valuable track time. Being on the back foot from the beginning meant the team had to work overtime to recover during sprint qualifying and the sprint race itself. The real breakthrough came during qualifying when Ferrari found significant performance improvements through fine-tuning their setup. This set the stage for what would become Leclerc's first podium in 6 races. But it wasn't handed to him on a silver platter. He engaged in an epic battle with Lando Norris that lasted almost the entire race, showcasing the kind of wheel-to-wheel combat that makes Formula One so thrilling to watch. What makes this podium even more impressive is the context. Ferrari has been struggling in the second half of the season, and the constant speculation about team leadership hasn't helped matters. When you're dealing with what Leclerc described as unfounded noise and rumors, maintaining focus becomes incredibly challenging. Yet here he was, proving that Ferrari can still deliver when it matters most. The numbers tell an interesting story too. Only 10 points separate Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes in the fight for second place in the Constructors' Championship. Every point matters, and every podium finish becomes crucial not just for individual driver standings, but for the team's overall position. Leclerc currently sits 5th in the Drivers' Championship, and performances like Austin remind everyone why he's considered one of the sport's elite talents. But let's talk about what Leclerc actually said after the race, because his words were as powerful as his driving. He openly acknowledged that the noise around the team had an impact, calling the rumors completely unfounded. This wasn't just a diplomatic response. It was a driver standing up for his team and calling out the speculation for what it was. The beauty of Leclerc's approach is how he used his on-track performance to make his point. Actions speak louder than words in Formula One, and by delivering a podium finish while dealing with all this external pressure, he demonstrated Ferrari's ability to stay focused on what truly matters. It's one thing to dismiss rumors in a press conference. It's entirely different to back up those words with results on Sunday. This situation also highlights the unique pressures that come with driving for Ferrari. The Italian team carries more history, passion, and expectation than perhaps any other constructor in Formula One. When you're part of the Ferrari family, every decision is scrutinized, every rumor is amplified, and every performance is dissected by millions of passionate fans worldwide. Looking ahead, this Austin podium could be a turning point for Ferrari's season. With several races remaining, and the Constructors' Championship fight so tight, momentum matters enormously. Leclerc's performance and his strong words about team unity might be exactly what Ferrari needed to silence the critics and refocus on their racing objectives. The message from Austin is clear. While rumors swirl and speculation continues, Ferrari remains focused on what they do best: racing. Charles Leclerc proved that sometimes the best way to respond to unfounded gossip is with pure performance, and that third-place trophy serves as the perfect exclamation point to his statement. What if I told you that a single moment at turn 15 inches Austin just changed everything for one Formula One driver? Carlos Sainz thought he was having the weekend of his life with Williams, but now he's staring down the barrel of serious consequences that could derail his entire season. This isn't just about one crash. This is about a pattern that's been building for months, and the FIA has finally decided enough is enough. Stick around, because what happened next will shock you, and it reveals a massive problem that could affect every driver on the grid. Let me paint you the picture of what should have been Carlos Sainz's redemption weekend. The Williams driver had just pulled off something incredible in Saturday's sprint race. While the McLaren boys Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris were busy taking each other out, Sainz swooped in like a hawk and grabbed third place. For a Williams car, that's basically winning the lottery. The momentum carried into qualifying, where Sainz proved this wasn't just luck. He muscled his way into Q3 for the second time in just 3 races, securing 9th on the grid for Sunday's main event. Everything was falling into place perfectly. His new team was finally giving him a car he could work with, and he was showing exactly why Ferrari had kept him around for so long. But here's where the story takes a devastating turn. On lap 6 of the race, Sainz found himself behind Andrea Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes at the tight turn 15 complex. This is where racing instinct meets split-second decision-making, and unfortunately for Sainz, this moment would define his entire weekend in the worst possible way. Sainz had just executed a beautiful overtaking move on Ollie Behrman at the exact same corner. Confidence was high, the car felt good underneath him, and he could sense another opportunity brewing. When Antonelli appeared in his sights, every racing instinct told him to go for it. This is what separates the great drivers from the good ones: that willingness to seize the moment when it presents itself. The Spaniard launched his attack on the inside line, fully committed to making the move stick. But racing is a dance between two partners, and sometimes that dance goes horribly wrong. According to Sainz, Antonelli began closing the door earlier than expected. The space that should have been there suddenly wasn't. In that split second when physics takes over, Sainz locked up his brakes, desperately trying to avoid the inevitable collision. The contact sent both cars spinning, ending Sainz's race on the spot and leaving him walking back to the pits with his head down. What looked like a routine racing incident on track became something much more serious once the stewards got involved. This is where the real drama begins. The FIA stewards conducted a thorough investigation, reviewing onboard cameras, external footage, and hearing testimony from both drivers and their teams. Their conclusion was crystal clear and brutal for Sainz. According to the official report, at no point before the apex was Sainz's front axle alongside or ahead of Antonelli's mirrors. In Formula One's driving standards guidelines, this means one thing: Sainz had not earned the right to be left space. This technical ruling might sound like boring regulation speak, but it carries massive consequences. The steward slapped Sainz with a 5-place grid penalty for the upcoming Mexican Grand Prix, but that was just the beginning of his punishment. The real damage came in the form of 2 penalty points added to his super license. Here's where this story gets really interesting and potentially scary for Sainz. Those 2 penalty points brought his total to 4 within the current 12-month window. Now, you might think 4 points doesn't sound like much, But in Formula One's penalty system, 12 points equals an automatic one-race ban. We're talking about a professional athlete being forced to sit out a race, losing crucial championship, points, and potentially millions in prize money. This isn't Sainz's first rodeo with Antonelli either. Earlier this year in Bahrain, these two drivers had another coming together that cost Sainz 2 penalty points for forcing the Mercedes driver off track. There's clearly some history brewing between these two, and the stewards are taking notice. The penalty point system was introduced back in 2014, but it took until last year for anyone to actually get banned under it. Kevin Magnussen became the unfortunate first driver to reach that 12-point threshold, proving this isn't just an empty threat from the FIA. They will enforce these rules, and careers can be impacted. What makes this situation even more frustrating for Sainz is that he and Williams successfully appealed a previous penalty point decision from the Dutch Grand Prix. They had called that original ruling against Liam Lawson a complete joke, and amazingly, they won that appeal. But lightning doesn't strike twice, and this Austin incident stuck. Sainz's explanation of events paints a picture of a racing incident rather than reckless driving. He emphasized that he had just completed an identical overtaking maneuver moments before, suggesting this wasn't a desperate or ill-conceived attempt. His perspective highlights the incredibly fine margins that separate successful overtakes from race-ending collisions in Formula One. The Williams driver also touched on something that every racing fan can relate to: the eternal balance between playing it safe and going for glory. He could have settled for 8th place, brought the car home, and collected valuable points for his team. Instead, he chose to risk it all for a potential 6th or 7th place finish, and this time the gamble didn't pay off. What's particularly telling about this incident is how it exposes the psychological pressure drivers face every single weekend. Sainz admitted that both he and Antonelli didn't do a good job managing the pressures situation, acknowledging that racing awareness goes both ways. But in the steward's eyes, ultimate responsibility fell squarely on his shoulders. This penalty system serves a crucial purpose in modern Formula One, but it also creates a sword of Damocles hanging over every driver's head. One moment of misjudgment, one racing incident that goes wrong, and suddenly you're facing career-threatening consequences. For Sainz, with 8 more penalty points potentially looming before his slate gets wiped clean, every single on-track battle now carries extra weight. The timing couldn't be worse for Sainz either. He's in his first season with Williams, trying to prove he belongs at the top level after his Ferrari exit. Every point matters. Every opportunity to showcase his talent is precious, and now he's starting the Mexican Grand Prix weekend with a 5-place grid penalty and the knowledge that he's 1/3 of the way toward a race ban. This story perfectly encapsulates everything that makes Formula One simultaneously thrilling and heartbreaking, where split-second decisions can define entire seasons. What if I told you that one of the most dominant Formula One drivers of all time is now the underdog in a championship fight? And according to a rival team boss, that might actually be his secret weapon? The 2025 Formula One season has delivered something nobody saw coming. Max Verstappen, the man who seemed untouchable just months ago, is now trailing Oscar Piastri by 40 points in the championship standings. But here's where it gets interesting. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff believes this position as the hunter rather than the hunted might actually give Verstappen a crucial psychological edge over the McLaren drivers. Think about it. When you're leading a championship, every single point matters. Every race weekend becomes a balancing act between aggression and caution. You start calculating risks differently. Do you send it into that gap that's barely there? Or do you play it safe and settle for the points? This mental burden is exactly what Piastri and his McLaren teammate are dealing with right now. Wolff knows this pressure intimately. He's watched his own drivers navigate the treacherous waters of championship fights, and he's seen how the mathematics of a title race can mess with a driver's head. When you're ahead, you're not just racing against other cars on track, you're racing against probability, against the what-ifs, against the fear of throwing it all away with one mistake. But Verstappen? He's got nothing to lose and everything to gain. The odds are stacked against him, and that's exactly where he thrives. This is a driver who built his reputation on taking risks that others wouldn't dare attempt. Now he's in a position where those risks are not just acceptable, they're necessary. The psychological warfare in Formula One is often invisible to viewers, but it's constantly happening. Every move on track sends a message. Every aggressive overtake plants a seed of doubt. When Verstappen makes one of his trademark late-braking moves or squeezes through a gap that shouldn't exist, he's not just gaining positions, he's getting inside his rivals' heads. What makes this situation even more fascinating is how quickly the tables have turned. Red Bull's car development has been nothing short of remarkable. They've managed to transform their struggling machine into a race-winning weapon at precisely the right moment. This kind of momentum shift doesn't just affect lap times, it affects mindset. Verstappen is experiencing something he hasn't felt since early 2022, the hunger of the chase. For years, he's been the man everyone else was trying to catch. Now he's the one doing the chasing, and that role reversal has unleashed something primal in his driving. There's a freedom that comes with being the underdog, a license to take chances that leaders simply can't afford. Wolff's assessment isn't just about Verstappen's psychological state, it's about how that mental advantage translates into on-track performance. When you believe you have nothing to lose, your driving changes. You brake later, you commit to moves earlier, you take lines that others won't consider. This aggressive approach can be the difference between finishing second and winning races. The McLaren drivers, particularly Piastri as the championship leader, now face a different kind of pressure. They're not just managing their own performance anymore. They're managing expectations, points calculations, and the constant awareness that one DNF could change everything. This is where championships are often won and lost, not on the track, but in the mind. What's particularly interesting about Wolff's perspective is that he's not emotionally invested in this fight. As an outsider looking in, he can see the dynamics clearly. He recognizes that Verstappen's current position, while mathematically challenging, might actually be the perfect setup for a championship charge. The history of Formula One is littered with examples of drivers who performed their best when their backs were against the wall. There's something about adversity that brings out peak performance in elite athletes. Verstappen has always been at his most dangerous when people count him out, and right now, the odds are definitely against him. But here's what makes this championship fight so compelling. It's not just about one driver's psychological advantage. It's about how that advantage ripples through entire teams. Red Bull is operating with the confidence of a team that has nothing to lose, while McLaren must navigate the pressure of protecting a lead they've worked so hard to build. As we head into the final stages of this championship battle, the mental game becomes increasingly important. Every race weekend brings new pressure, new calculations, and new opportunities for psychological warfare. Verstappen's advantage as the hunter might be invisible in the timing sheets, but it could prove to be the most decisive factor in determining who claims the 2025 championship crown. Formula One fans are screaming that races have become absolutely unwatchable, and one of the sport's biggest stars just dropped a bombshell explanation that nobody saw coming. George Russell didn't hold back when he revealed the shocking truth behind why modern F1 has turned into a parade of cars following each other in single file. Picture this. You wake up early on a Sunday morning, grab your coffee, settle into your favorite chair, and tune in to watch what should be the pinnacle of motorsport. Instead, you get 2 hours of cars driving in formation with barely any overtaking action. Sound familiar? You're not alone in feeling frustrated. The United States Grand Prix perfectly showcased this problem. After an explosive opening lap, positions essentially froze for the remainder of the race. Russell himself experienced this firsthand when he made a brilliant start but found himself trapped behind other cars with zero opportunities to make progress. What happened next reveals everything wrong with current Formula One racing. Russell explained how the opening moments at Turn 1 basically determined the entire race outcome. When Max Verstappen covered Lando Norris defensively, it created a domino effect that locked Russell into his position for the next hour and a half. This isn't racing anymore. It's follow the leader at 300 kilometers per hour. But here's where things get really interesting. Russell pinpointed exactly what's causing this epidemic of boring races, and it's something that affects every single car on the grid. The culprit? Tire technology has become too good for exciting racing. Think about that for a moment. The very component designed to make cars faster and safer has inadvertently destroyed the unpredictability that made Formula One legendary. Russell revealed that tire degradation has virtually disappeared from modern racing, creating a situation where cars can run identical lap times throughout an entire stint. This creates a cry to Norris. Mathematical nightmare for overtaking. When the fastest car on track is only 2 or 3/10ths of a second quicker than the slowest car in the top 6, and every circuit requires at least half a second advantage to complete an overtake, you get processional racing. The numbers simply don't add up for wheel-to-wheel action. Russell couldn't even remember the last time teams needed to make 2 pit stops during a race. The Austin Grand Prix became another single-stop affair, eliminating strategic variety that previously created opportunities for position changes. When everyone runs the same strategy with tires that last the entire distance, races become predictable chess matches rather than dynamic battles. Here's what makes this situation even more frustrating for everyone involved. Tire supplier Pirelli finds themselves in an impossible position that Russell actually defended. When tires degrade quickly, drivers complain they can't push their cars to the limit and must constantly manage tire wear. Fans hate watching drivers cruise around conserving rubber instead of attacking. But when Pirelli produces durable tires that allow flat-out driving, races become boring processions with no strategic variation. The tire manufacturer literally cannot win regardless of what approach they take. Russell acknowledged this catch-22 situation while explaining why current tires create terrible racing despite being technically superior products. The Mercedes driver outlined his ideal tire scenario that would revolutionize Formula One entertainment. Imagine soft tires that provide blistering pace for exactly 12 laps before performance falls off a cliff. Medium compounds lasting 15 laps with similar degradation patterns. Hard tires giving 20 laps of competitive speed before requiring replacement. This would force teams into aggressive 2 or 3 stop strategies with genuine performance differences between compound choices. Drivers could attack at maximum speed, knowing their tires would eventually demand pit stops, creating natural opportunities for position changes and strategic battles. Unfortunately, creating such precisely calibrated tire performance across different temperatures, track surfaces, and weather conditions presents enormous technical challenges. What sounds simple in theory becomes incredibly complex when dealing with 20 different circuits and varying atmospheric conditions throughout a season. Russell also addressed claims that sprint race weekends contribute to predictable racing by giving teams additional data. While acknowledging this factor exists, he emphasized that lack of tire degradation remains the primary culprit behind processional racing. Even without sprint sessions, recent races have featured minimal overtaking action. The Ferrari's inability to overtake Carlos Sainz during the sprint perfectly illustrated this problem. Years ago, such a situation would have been resolved within a few laps through aggressive racing or strategic maneuvering. Today's cars follow each other in formation, regardless of pace differences. This revelation from Russell exposes a fundamental contradiction in modern Formula One development. Engineers have succeeded in creating incredibly reliable, fast, and safe racing machines. Tire technology has advanced to provide consistent performance that allows drivers to extract maximum speed without constant degradation concerns. Yet these technological achievements have inadvertently eliminated the unpredictable elements that made Formula One compelling television. When every variable becomes controlled and optimized, racing becomes a scientific exercise rather than an entertainment spectacle. The sport now faces a crucial decision point. Continue pursuing technical perfection that produces boring races, or deliberately introduce artificial elements that create unpredictability. Neither option satisfies everyone, but something must change to restore Formula One's reputation as the world's most exciting racing series. Russell's honest assessment provides hope that drivers and teams recognize this problem and want solutions. Whether Formula One's governing bodies will implement changes remains uncertain, but acknowledging the issue represents the first step toward fixing modern racing's entertainment deficit.